Welcome to the music room for April 2nd, 2016. We got up early this morning to go to the Montrose Women's Club Flea Market. It was held over at Friendship Hall. It started at 8 a.m. We got there at 7:55 because we wanted to get in on all those early bird finds. And boy, did I find two. I found the Jimi Hendrix Experience Smash Hits. This is my first Jimi Hendrix album that I had. And Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. I never actually had this album. I had a cassette of the album, but I never had the album. So this is the first time I've actually owned it. A lot of these albums actually are, I'm owning them for the first time, and I actually get excited about that. It's kind of cool. Okay, Dark Side of the Moon. Pulled it out. Thought of my friend Andy. Andy and I met each other in junior high. I used to ride my 1977 DT 175 to school when I was 13 years old, because you could get a license in New Mexico at that time. And he thought that was cool. He liked the freedom of being able to go wherever he wanted, so he ended up buying one as well. Same color, same year, everything was the same. So we had the same kind of equipment, but Andy's skill level was so much more than mine. He kicked my ass whenever we went out riding. But I still hung in there with Andy. Well, I ate a lot of dust for years following him on those old DT 175s. That's the best motorcycle I think I've ever had. I just loved it. It gave me a lot of freedom when I was in junior high and high school. Okay, this album here, we'd go down to Andy's basement. He had a pool table in his basement, and he had like a kind of a cheap stereo, like a Montgomery Ward's, with particle board speakers and stuff. It was kind of junky, but it didn't matter. We couldn't play it very loud because his parents were always upstairs. So it'd be most of the time it would be Alistair and Andy and I, maybe a guy named Dave and Jason. Those were kind of the five people that were kind of in and out of Andy's basement. Oh, and John. There was another guy named John. No last names. We'll get to John here at some point when we talk about. Well, I don't need to bring that up. Okay, so at some point, well, let me just put this on. Now, this album, Andy had the artwork that came in this album. It was the. This is the art designed by an artist named, or an art firm called Pignosis. This is a very famous, what do they call these things? Prism. Glass prism with a spectrum. He had the poster of this up on the wall behind the cheap stereo there down in the basement. This thing here has, it's got Breathe, Time, Money, and the song I never liked, and I still don't like it. In fact, when it came on today, I played this album earlier. I had to turn it off. Great Gig in the Sky. Hate it. All right. The song I'm going to play is on side 2. It's called Brain Damage. I'm going to go ahead and put on. This might be a little bit, earlier before Brain Damage, but we'll get to that. I'll go ahead and talk over this. I'm going to put this on here. We'll talk a little bit about Pink Floyd, this Dark Side of the Moon here in a minute. Anyway, Andy had he ended up buying a street bike in high school, a GS 550. It was a Suzuki, and he rode the crap out of that thing. He got to be very proficient at street riding. I could tell a lot of stories about that. I'll just tell two. I remember that when he would come up to Los Alamos on a Friday night when he was at my house, they would go on speed runs. He and Alistair would go on speed runs. And one of the things they would do is, Andy had a little license plate that he made out of construction paper, and he wrote "Ha Ha" on it. It was at the time New Mexico plates were yellow with burnt orange lettering, so he wrote "Ha Ha" on there. He put that on his motorcycle license plate, and then he'd go to kind of torment the cops in town. And he could always lose them because there were bike paths in the western area, and he'd get to a certain point and head down one of those bike paths and then just pop out into my yard, basically. So as long as he was on the right kind of street at the right time, he could always lose them. And then those guys would do these speed runs down to Ottawee Bridge, which is the bridge that goes over the Rio, down by the reservation. and they would just haul ass down there. And I remember being on the back. I went on one of these speed runs, and I'll never do it again, because they could get down there in like 7 minutes, doing 90, 100 miles an hour. And Andy wasn't shy about, well, Andy's line is about the highway, or the lines in the road those were merely guidelines. So if the line that he wanted to be on was on the opposing lane of traffic on the other side of the white line, and he decided that that's where he needed to be, well, that's where he would go. So we'd go down on these speed runs at night, of course, and we would be completely leaned over on the opposing in the opposing lane's shoulder. And I was like, what am I doing on the back of this motorcycle? This is crazy. So I only did that one time, and I'll never do it again. But whenever I see this Dark Side of the Moon, I'm like, oh, this goddamn speed runs. I've never been more scared in my life. But anyway, Andy was very proficient at that with the GS 550, and then he bought a Ducati 900 when he was in high school, and that thing was like butter. I rode that thing. I rode that thing one time. Now I'm still riding my DT 175. I get on this 900, and I go up in the western area, buzz up Sandia, and I'm in first gear, and I'm going 55 miles an hour. In first gear, I didn't dare shift to second. I would be doing 90. I just did this little loop, around 45th and 41st Street, and buzzed up Sandia, and then I was done. I never rode that motorcycle again. It's just too dangerous. Okay, so those are speed runs. Now, I think about 4 years ago, I made an offer to Andy. I said, hey, if you're ever in Los Alamos, give me a call. I'll buzz down there, bring a couple bikes down. We'll go ride some trails. And I did a picture of the day of this. At that point, Gary and Andy and I went out riding. And I decided, of the motorcycles I had access to for Andy, I would take down the XR 200. Now, I have a DR 400, so my bike is much more powerful than his, and I figured maybe I'll be able to keep up with that bastard now. So I gave him the 200, knowing that, well, it was a pipe dream to think I could still keep up with Andy. No, there was no keeping up with Andy. He got on that thing, and he just rode it like a bat out of hell. There was no way I'm going to, Grandpa's going to keep up with this kid. All right. Let's talk about this guy here. Dark Side of the Moon. This is one of the iconic albums of oh, here, my song is coming on right now. This album was on Billboard's, top 100 for like decades. Now, for you kids out there that are actually paying attention, or, have you made it this far, this album here, this is absolutely one of the best albums of the 70s, is this one, along with Wish You Were Here. If you don't have these on your iPod or in your phone, you should just get this one right now. This thing is awesome. There's a couple of stories about the songs on this. This has a song called Time, and everyone in the 70s had the bright idea of, let's take time and set that as my alarm clock. So I had a Technics turntable that had this mechanism. Well, you guys don't even know what cassette tapes are. Okay, anyway, the cassette tape, if you leave it in play and it's not actually spinning, you'll leave a flat spot on the capstan. So you can't set it on play and then put it on like a timer. You can't do that because you kind of ruin the capstan doing that. My tape deck, my Technics, had this little switch thing that was built for a timer. It didn't have a timer in the cassette deck, but it had this little mechanical arm that would pull the capstan off or pull the pinch roller. That's the thing that gets flattened. The pinch roller gets flattened. The capstan is the thing that spins. So pull the capstan off the pinch roller, and then when the power got applied, it would click it back on again, and you could play it. So you cue this up to Time. Time has got this ungodly amount of bells in it. You'll just have to download this and play yourself. this ungodly amount of bells, and if you don't wake up to that, you're dead. I did that one time. I did it in Las Cruces at the Leisure Club. I clued that in. We all had to get up for something or other, and my stereo started blasting that time, and that was the only time I did it, and I'll never do that again. It scares the shit out of you. Okay. All right. One last thing about Dark Side of the Moon here. There is an internet rumor that went around for a very long time that Dark Side of the Moon was sequenced to the Wizard of Oz movie. And so if you are looking for something very interesting to do with your friends on a Friday night, get the Wizard of Oz on a DVD, and get the Dark Side of the Moon on a CD. And what you want to do is cue this up to play, and then when the roar of the MGM lion, I think they come and they roar 3 times. When the third roar happens, hit the play, and let this album play all the way through while you're watching Wizard of Oz. And you tell me that these guys didn't sequence it to Wizard of Oz. That's your challenge. So, this is it. Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. Thanks for watching. This is the Music Room for April 2nd, 2016.
Touch and all that you see, all that you taste.